voice. So Facebook got to hear that too. I've tried to turn that off, but I've discovered that I think that it's like some licensing thing that they have to let people know they're being recorded.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, so I don't think that I can actually turn it off, but maybe I can, and I just am not tech enough to figure out how to turn it off. So, hello, David. Hello, Kim. We're live on Facebook now. How are you both?
Doing well.
Good. We're actually recording this for YouTube. So while we are live on Facebook now, and it does stay on Facebook forever, it's also going to be on our YouTube channel. So if anybody misses anything, they can always go back and either watch it on Facebook again, or they can see it on the YouTube channel. So I'm going to fill a little bit of time talking a little bit about Warwick's while Facebook notifies everybody that we are live. For those of you, I think David is in North Virginia, Kim is in Toronto, so we're in the other corner of the world of the United States, down at the bottom corner there. So we might have people joining us from all over the country and Canada, another country. So for those of you that aren't familiar with who Warwick's is located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. We are, my little sign there, and people who watch me often get tired of me probably saying this, but Kim and David, you haven't heard me yet. So we are actually, it says 1896. We are actually celebrating our 125th anniversary this year.
Wow.
So yeah, it's, well, we're not the oldest bookstore in the country. We're the oldest continuously family owned. So Nancy Warwick, our owner, is the 4th generation owner of the store. So we're doing some really fun celebrations for our 125th anniversary. So anybody who's watching, stay tuned for some announcements. Get on our email list. We're going to be doing some fun things, some fun gift certificate giveaways and trivia, because it was really fun to go through the archives and see what history Warwick's has survived through. I mean, this is our 2nd pandemic. We've been through 2 world wars. We, the invention of television, they were like, oh no, will anybody read books anymore? So we had some fun going through the archives, looking at, some of the things that we've survived. So if you are in the San Diego, I'm going to be putting David and Kim's book into the chat function or the comment section of Facebook. Easy to click on that. We can ship books anywhere. I don't think we can ship books up to Canada though. Sorry, Kim, but hopefully people are in the United States and we can ship them to them. But if you're in the San Diego area, we would love for you to come by the store. There's nothing better than browsing books, but there's also another side that has great gifts and jewelry and all kinds of fun stuff. Kim and David are going to talk for about 35 minutes, and then we're going to bring in some questions from you. So don't be shy, ask those questions in the comment section, and we'll bring those in after they're done with their discussion. So I think I've given Facebook enough time to notify everybody that we're here. So let me introduce you to who our guests are today, and I will toss it to them. So David Swinson grew up in Washington, D.C., Beirut, Mexico City, and Stockholm, the son of a Foreign Service officer. He's a retired police detective from the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C., having been assigned to major crimes. Swinson is the author of The Second Girl, Crime Song, and Trigger. He lives with his wife and daughter in North Virginia, and he's here today to talk about his latest book, City on the Edge, and maybe even talk about the cicadas. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to talk about what that's all about.
I wish I had one to show you. I'll go get one.
Oh, that might creep me out a little too much. With it today is Kim Howe. Kim is the executive director of the International Thriller Writers, as well as an internationally best-selling author. She has spent the last 6 years immersed in the shadowy world of kidnap and ransom to create verisimilitude. Oh my God, that word, when I saw it in your bio, I was like, oh my God, I got to Google how to say that. In the Freedom Broker series, which showcases elite kidnapping negotiator Thea Paris. Thea is one of only 25 elite kidnap and ransom specialists in the world, and the only one who is a woman. When the series kicks off, Thea faces the most urgent and challenging rescue mission of her life, her own father's. Kim has a master's in writing popular fiction from Seton Hill University. Travel and adventure are her passions. So with that, you two have a great conversation. We'll see you in about a half hour.
Thank you.
Thanks for the wonderful introduction, Julia. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone tonight. And David, I'm a huge fan of your work, so thanks a lot for letting me interview you.
Thank you.
So I recently read City on Edge, and I absolutely loved it. You and I have talked before, we have similar childhoods. We both moved around a lot as kids. My father worked in telecommunications, and your father worked in the foreign service. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I would love to ask you to kick things off. What is one really positive thing that came out of that lifestyle growing up? And then what was one maybe slightly frustrating thing?
The most positive thing is, I think, familiar to you, is just that, you know, gaining so much knowledge of different cultures, and, you know, and it actually honed my skills as a writer. I mean, in a lot of the countries I grew up in, there was no television, you know, so I had to read, you know, so my dad had an avid collection of books, from, you know, ranging from Graham Greene to, you know, Jean Le Carré to, you know, everyone. So I read, so that's probably, and tons of comic books. Okay. I admit, you know, I mean, I was an Archie's fan, and, you know, I'm sure that's going to please, like, you know, people like Alex Segura and people like that. But reading, and I think the worst thing was, you know, the tours were 3 to 4 years, and so you'd make all these friends and have to say goodbye, you know. And so, but, you know, now because of social media, I'm I'm getting them back as friends on social media. A lot of the American Community School, you know, students, we met up on Facebook, and so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It's changed the world, because we used to, you know, write letters to people.
Yeah. Yeah, letters.
And no one kept that up. So which country would you go back to if you could spend a year?
Is it just one? I mean, can I pick two?
Sure, you can. You can
Yeah, Beirut,
Mhm.
definitely, and Mallorca, Spain.
Oh, yes, it's beautiful there.
Yeah, I'd love to, you know, I'm sure it's really changed. I hear it's even more touristy. It was pretty touristy when I lived there. I went to an American Community School there, because in Stockholm they didn't have they didn't have a high school for American kids. So I had the choice between Mallorca, Spain, and Frankfurt, Germany. So what do you think a 16-year-old boy is gonna pick? You know, an island, you know, with, you know, great food, beautiful women, and, you know, just you know, surrounded by water, you know.
Yeah, that's what I call roughing it. I love it.
I was roughing it that big time.
So let's talk, because this, you know, the book is set, you know, in Beirut. So tell us, you know, kind of conceptually, how you see Beirut as a city, and what stands out in your mind about it.
Well, I wrote about Beirut in the 70s, so I did not do any research. It's based on my recollection. It's based on photographs in my yearbooks. The city's been rebuilt, but what stands out most about the city is, you know, just it. Even, you know, we were there before all the stuff was happening, before the civil war, and then during, and, you know, during the curfews. But before, I mean, there was such freedom, you know, for us as American kids, and for all the kids. I mean, we wandered the streets, and, you know, sandals and shorts and shirtless, and, you know, there was so much in that city, you know, and, you know, we were right on the edge, literally the edge. It was on the edge of the sea. And so we were right over the Mediterranean. So we climbed the seawall and hit the reefs and go snorkeling. And, you know, there's just so much memory. I mean, I don't know if I quite answered your question. I sort of lost track, thinking about, you know, my childhood.
I think it's really, for you, I can tell it's all about the water. You could keep going back to it.
Yeah, it's always been about the water for me. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
I'm a real water person as well. So I felt like you did a phenomenal job. And for anyone who hasn't read the book yet, highly recommended, because Beirut really comes alive as an actual other character. And you did a phenomenal job of really making that, come to the page. But one of the things I was amazed at was how well you handled the point of view of a 12-year-old boy. So dive into that, unpack that for us. Was that like reliving your past or memories, or is it just something you felt comfortable?
It's memories. It's, language of the 70s, and I remember my childhood, in the 70s and in the 80s, I remember it well. And dialogue has always been first and foremost, and in my work. And I, a lot of it was when I was looking at pictures and in the yearbook. I mean, a lot of that mentality came back, that 12-year-old, um, mentality. And it was just really great to get into a head of a character that really is not me. There is a lot that is me. There were battles over candy, and stuff like that. And, that was a big thing when someone would go stateside and come back with all this candy that you could not get. And I'm sure you're familiar with this because you lived in the Middle East, right?
Yes, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia, and there's certain candy you can't get Tootsie Rolls. I don't think you get them in Saudi Arabia. And I just remember the conversations, the bartering, and and you had all this lira, and you were trying to barter to get your candy. So it just came back fairly quickly. Just the attitude.
Yeah, and so thematically speaking, I sense that there is kind of everything isn't what it seems. There's always this like other layer lurking under the surface, no matter where I looked. Did you pointedly do that or choose that, or did it just come like organically?
It was both purposeful and, it just wrote itself in. As a naive 12-year-old kid, not me, but Graham, I wanted there to be that sense of, mystery, like where you really, you put your father on a pedestal and you don't really, you always, wonder, what he's doing, and, and you're discovering new things, and you sneak in and listen at the parties and stuff like that, so that was pretty purposeful.
Yeah, it was well done. I really definitely felt like every time I thought I knew something, then something else would show me that I wasn't quite there yet. And it really made me read on.
Yeah, and that's why I did short chapters too, it made it easier for me to do that.
It was absolutely fantastic. So I love the fact that you've had this kind of eclectic career. You worked in the kind of punk and rock and roll business, and then you were, police officer. That's definitely, it's sort of extremes. So how did those two jobs help you become an author?
Oh my gosh. Well, I wanted to be an author since I was 17 years old. In fact, I wrote my first book when I was 17 and got my first rejection when I was 18. And to this day, and I've mentioned this before, I truly believe publishers took unsolicited manuscripts. I'm dating myself back then. And my father sent it to, I Swear Little Brown. And when I was 18, I got a rejection. And I'm sure if the editor had known that I was a 17-year-old kid at the time, turned 18, that they would have been a little more kind. So, I've always wanted to be a writer. And that's why I chose my degree in film, is I thought I'd write screenplays. But then as it happened, I fell into, through a relationship with a girl, I fell into the alternative music scene, and ended up, both of us ended up promoting and, finding venues, because no kids, we found that a lot of the kids in punk rock and alternative music in Long Beach, California had no place to go. They pretty much would, they couldn't go to Orange County because they didn't have cars. They couldn't go all the way to Hollywood, to like the Whiskey, or, in Orange County to the Cuckoo's Nest or places like that. So I found a couple of venues and started promoting punk rock, and it became not only punk, but alternative. I mean, everyone from, hardcore, punk to, the Pixies and Throwing Muses to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, even to Guns N' Roses, which wasn't punk. And No Doubt had one of their first shows at one of my clubs.
I love them.
Yeah, and so one thing just segued into another, and then I got into, in one club I had a Dead Evening Wednesdays, and as the writer in me, I wanted to do evenings of conversation, and of course I wanted to pick writers. So I had this friend who happened to manage, or I met him, and we're friends to this day. He managed Hunter S. Thompson and Timothy Leary and a lot of great counterculture heroes. And so I opened up an evening of conversation with people like that, and then that path led to film, where I did my first film with New Line Cinema, a now cult film called Roadside Prophets. And then I got very tired. I had the right, well, actually, Layla Nabulsi had the rights to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Hunter S. Thompson's book, and could never get it made. And she finally got it made with Johnny Depp. But by that time, I was in the police academy, and I'd always wanted, because of my father, I'd always wanted to get into law enforcement. I always thought that he had something to do with not so much law enforcement, more international type thing. But I always wanted to be a cop, and I decided I'm going to try that, and maybe I'll last 5 years. I really thought it'd only last 5 years, and I'd really get a lot of experience as a writer. And I lasted, going on 20 years.
But what an incredible background, really, for writing, the books you're writing, except for this one, where you have the disgraced police officer / PI, and you know that world inside out. You can write with authenticity. And would you say that there's anything that happened in your police career that you felt was just too bizarre to put in a book? Because as we know, the truth is stranger than fiction, but sometimes it's not believable in a novel.
I can't really talk about a lot of the stuff, but yeah, there is a lot that is stranger than fiction. I mean, even in City on the Edge, there's a scene where I'm not really giving anything up that takes place at the river. That actually happened when we were camping out there. But the way they got across the river, and we got across the river in real life, was just too outrageous and too stranger than fiction that I couldn't write it. I was saying, no one's going to believe this. It's just incredible. There's no way my dad could, fell a tree, that would land directly over the river, a raging river, so we could get across it. But in my police career, yeah, there's quite a lot, that I don't write about anything that actually happened. I won't do that. It's again just based on experiences of, I've seen several dead bodies. I've seen people die. I've seen, I've been involved in an interview and interrogation of hundreds and hundreds of suspects and defendants and victims, and and the stories I've heard, are incredible, and a lot of them you just, you want to write about, but you think that, no, that's too crazy, that's unbelievable.
Well, there's no better way to see humanity, actually, than I think being a police officer, because you see all walks of life, and you see people sometimes at their very worst, which is truly fascinating. So I would love to hear your kind of first sales story. Like, how did that happen? Did you get an agent right away? Did you get rejected many times? I know you said you were rejected, at 18, but after that, did you keep writing?
When I was rejected, I really got hurt, and actually when the film Roadside Prophets was made, I actually just conceived the story for it along with Bill Stanky, who happened to managed Hunter S. Thompson and all those guys, and we made it, got it together. I was too afraid to write the screenplay because I was afraid of getting rejected again. So we ended up hiring a girl named Abby Wool, who wrote a film, co-wrote a film called Sid and Nancy. I don't know if you remember Sid and Nancy. When I became a cop, I always knew I would still be a writer. And A Detailed Man was the first book that I wrote, but never got accepted by a major publisher. And it was too police procedural. I went through 5 agents, and then finally landed on an incredible agent, 2 incredible agents at the same agency, and got more rejections. And then finally, because they were too police procedural, and finally I decided I just want to write something outside of myself. And I think that's what did it for me, is I went outside of myself and created this character that is nothing like me, Frank Marr, and wrote The Second Girl. And I remember getting rejected by, and to this day, probably Josh Kendall does not remember rejecting me, but he rejected me in Mulholland Little Brown. And I said, please just send it to him first, nobody else. And my agent did, and he absolutely loved it. And so that, but it took years. It was not anything overnight. I mean, we're talking, I mean, in my early 50s, you know.
But wonderful that you persevered, and kept that dream alive, because so many people, I think, in this business do give up, and it really is about keeping at it, learning the craft. And I have to say, your writing is exceptionally smooth, seamless. It's brilliant. Like,
Thank you.
Very good writer. So what advice would you give to your younger self, looking back now?
Well, I think it's advice I'd give to other writers, because I never realized the obstacles. I never realized how hard it is. I never realized how hard it is to make a film, and I got a little film made, and I never realized how hard it is to become a writer, but I never, ever gave up, despite the rejections, despite everything. You just have to, I truly believe it. If you believe in what you're doing and you keep pursuing it and you don't quit, and you do not realize how many obstacles there are that get in your way, and you don't quit, you will eventually get there. Sometimes it can be overnight. Sometimes it's a process. Like me, it's years. Don't quit.
No, exactly. If it's your dream, keep pursuing it. So
Yes.
what made
And
you?
don't give up your job.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone, I know that newer writers quite often think, "Oh, I'm going to quit my job now." And it's like, probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
So when you're writing these, the Frank story, and then you decided to veer off in the direction of City on the Edge, what made you decide to do that? Did you want something like a refresher, or did you, what drove you to go away from your series?
It was timing. It wasn't really a departure. It wasn't really something that I wanted to do to get away from Frank Marr or anything like that. Frank, I always envisioned as a trilogy, because there's only so far you can take a character like that. He's just he's too much, and I'm not saying he's never going to come back. I mean, I'd love him to come back. I mean, he does have fans out there. City on the Edge, not by that title, but Beirut was a story that revolved within Beirut. What is something I've always wanted to write since my 20s. And there are versions of it. If you read the other versions, you'd laugh. You'd say, "Oh my gosh, this is never going to see the light of day." I mean, so I have gone through versions of City on the Edge throughout the years, and it just happened to be timing. And I had another 3-book deal with Mulholland Little Brown, and I presented it, And fortunately, you know, my editor, you know, said, this sounds good, you know, do it. And even better, you know, when I finished the first draft, he loved it. I really thought he'd like say, you know, screw this, David, I don't know what the hell you're doing, man. This sucks, you know. But, you know, he liked it, and I'm very surprised.
Well, it really resonated with me. I think coming of age stories, first of all, are very meaningful. And as well, like we touched on, you know, living as an expat, you know, traveling and seeing another culture and environment, I think is fascinating for most people because it's sort of like you get to travel without traveling.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Growing up, I would not change that, you know, in a million years. I would not change how I grew up, you know, living, you know, in different countries all over the United States. And, you know, I wouldn't change that for, I think it, it definitely made me who I am, and it made me, you know, gave me the life experience I need to be a writer. I don't write, I write based on experience. You know, I can't write, you know, I obviously I do research. I mean, there's things that change and I have to research, but a lot of my stuff has my, a lot of my life in it too. I'm not Frank Marr. I'm maybe 10% Frank Marr, you know. I don't go out and, sniff and stuff like that. But, you know, I've met people, you know, throughout my career, and, you know, knowing Hunter S. Thompson who do. And so that's why I picked that drug of choice for him. But everything else is based on, you know, my experiences.
Mhm.
Growing up around the world too, you know, I mean.
And it shows. But with respect to influences, I mean, your character's name is Graham. Is that any reference to Graham Greene? Are you passionate about his work?
Yeah, I grew up again with a father who had a massive book collection, and always, you know, the government always packed that and brought it everywhere. And my dad read to us. He didn't read, you know, children's stories at bedtime. He read like The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene, you know, and I discovered like Maj Showal and Per Waflu, you know, the whole Martin Beck series. You know, speaking of, you know, cities that are characters, you know, Stockholm, Sweden, you know, he had the whole 10-book series, and he would read, you know, like Graham Greene and Jean Le Carré, and, you know, he's still alive, but he didn't take his whole book collection with him. So I fortunately got stuck with all those paperbacks. So my influences are definitely a lot of the old, nothing, I'm not saying I can be compared to them, but, you know, Graham Greene is definitely, and Mashallah Parawafu, you know, and all of them are definitely, you know, major influences in my writing.
And did you do any studying, like with respect to university or classes in writing, or is it just natural?
Um, well, it's mostly natural, but my degree was in film, communications and film, radio, television, film, it was called at that time, at Cal State University in Long Beach. And so there was a screenwriter's course, you know, but I was never good at screenwriting. It was at that time, it's changed. And as you recall, I mean, Walter Mosley and I got in a conversation about this, about screenwriting. It's a little more lenient now. I think a lot of authors are really falling to, you know, not falling, I mean, like going into screenwriting. But back then it was just so formulaic. I could not fit into that mold. I just couldn't do it. So, but I took screenwriting courses. My original major was journalism. So I could always write, you know, but it was always something that came very, very natural to me. I was writing since I was 15. I'm not saying it was good, you know, but, you know, I always wrote.
I think you have a natural voice. You know, some people just are gifted that way and are able to, you know, just like I felt like when you do Frank, it's a very different voice than when you're doing Graham, you know, and I love that, the way you can switch and make it a dramatically different character. So what about reading over the pandemic? Are there any books you can recommend to all us wonderful people, you know, at Warwick's that want to shop there?
Yeah, go and buy Ryan Gaddis's The System. So dead on, so real, so incredible. It takes place in East Long Beach, and you know it's sort of procedural, you know, drama. It's just incredible. And then I read also Jonathan Ames, A Man Named Doll, which is a small book. It's a novella, which is wonderful. Those are the only two that I've really been able. There's several others I've read during the pandemic, but when I'm in the process of writing again another book, so I revert back to when I'm doing that. I revert back to the classics, you know, like just rereading, you know, like Dickens and you know and Harper Lee and you know and stuff like that. But I would definitely pick up, you know. Jonathan Ames also wrote You Weren't Really Here, which became the Amazon movie with Joaquin Phoenix, which is really, really powerful book. And he just writes these small books that are just very incredible. And it's like you're reading a movie, you know. Yeah. But Ryan Gaddis, The System, I would highly recommend that. Go pick that up at Warwick's.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I don't know if you had a chance to read Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby.
Oh my gosh, Sean. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You know, Sean was actually, I noticed his name, you know, right in the corner at one of the virtual book tours that I was doing, and I was so happy to see him there. We were on a panel together at Creatures, Creativity, and Crime, C3. Have you heard of C3? It's in Columbia, Maryland, and it's a very up and coming, not even close to like the Thriller Fest or anything like that, but I mean it's very up and coming. He gets, you know, Austin gets some incredible authors there, and Sean was one of them, and that's where I first met him. And yeah, his book and his first books too, which were published independently, are phenomenal. Yeah. Highly recommend that.
I agree. I think he's going to be a superstar.
Yeah, he's already a superstar. I haven't read his new book yet.
No, I'm waiting very impatiently for Razorblade Tears. Yes.
Yeah.
So, David, as we wrap things up and we go to the questions from any audience members, I do have one last question for you. As Julie said, I've been studying kidnap and ransom for the last 6 years, and I love asking people questions. What would they take with them if they were going to be kidnapped? The one thing you could take with you.
If you knew you were going to be kidnapped, well, you wouldn't be allowed to take it with you, but I mean, obviously your cell phone. But you're talking about a personal item?
Anything, really.
Anything? If you were going to be kidnapped?
Yeah.
I've actually been involved in, you know, some kidnappings where this crew used to kidnap people and put them in the trunks of their cars and then take them to a certain location and then force them to give ATM pins and stuff like that. Not the kind of kidnapping that on the international level that you write about. But if I could take one thing with me, it would probably, because you don't know if you're going to survive, would probably be a picture of my daughter.
Yeah, a lot of people actually say pictures of loved ones because
Yeah,
it's critical and you want to have hope.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, although I've had other people say things like peanut butter.
peanut butter. What?
They must be big fans of peanut butter. They can't live without it, I guess.
Or that can get you out of restraint somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know, but no, definitely a picture.
How about you, Julie? What are you taking with you?
Can I take a knife?
Can I take my gun?
Can I take my gun? Oh man. Yeah, that's a tough question because it's just
It's
like
a good question.
a great question. But there's got to be like, the Swiss Army knife that you can have in your back to like cut those zip ties off of you or something.
Exactly. Make a quick escape.
Yeah, get a quick escape going. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't even imagine what it's like researching kidnapping though over the last 6 years. It's like, do you have nightmares on a regular basis?
No, I guess I sort of like that dark world, I mean,
I kind of do too.
I feel like actually touched and transformed from the research because I have such empathy for the hostages and the people, what they've gone through, and it really makes you appreciate freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, you've actually not only interviewed hostages, not only interviewed like the negotiators, the people involved in, working the kidnappings, you've interviewed the victims. And that, to me, that is always, interviewing victims has always stayed with me. I mean, so there's certain things that have to stay with you that they say. And so, I mean, and I'm not put you on the spot, is there a commonality with all the hostages you've interviewed that have gotten out of, is there something that they have in common that they came out with?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think a successful hostage, meaning that you come and you're able to reclaim a somewhat normal life, doesn't necessarily depend on how long you're kept captive. It's often focused on the intensity of your captivity. So you could be kept overnight, and if it's a really, really rough night, you could be traumatized. But you could be kept, for 6 months, a year, and have a relatively easy and not be traumatized. I do think that it's very challenging because people expect the same person back home. Your family expects you to be the same because they love you and they missed you, and all of a sudden you disappeared and you're stuck in this frozen bubble, but then you come back different. And I think that is the reintegration process, I think, is one of the hardest things for people to do.
Mm. And where do they go for help?
Well, actually, there's a phenomenal organization called Hostage US and Hostage UK that was started by someone who had their brother kidnapped, and they basically provide psychological services and support of all different types. Try and get work training to get back into the job. Sometimes there are physical injuries where you can't do your old job, so you have to retrain to do another one. But it's a big transition, and like I said, I don't think anyone is ever the same after they're kidnapped. It just changes.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
It's probably a similar like PTSD from being at war. I mean, there's probably very similar kind of brain things that just you're changed fundamentally.
Yeah. I mean, the ones I've dealt with, we're talking about overnight or hours, and that had just as much of an impact as being kidnapped for a week or what I'm to them. I mean, it was terrifying, so that's interesting.
Yeah. David, I'm so glad that you brought up Ryan Gaddis. We hosted him back for All Involved, I think was his first or one of his first books. He's so great.
Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and I love his writing. And same with Sean. Sean's right. I mean, Blacktop Wasteland was just amazing. And so I'm with all of you. I haven't read Razorblade Tears yet, but I'm so looking forward to that one too.
Yeah. But what I love about both of them is they're so humble.
Oh my God. I haven't met, we're hosting Sean later in July for an event that's coming up later in July. I haven't, but you're probably correct, but Ryan for sure. I mean, he's just a great, just easy guy to talk to. Really something.
Yeah.
So David, before we wrap up things here a little bit, couple questions. Was the book always called City on the Edge?
No, it was originally called The Pigeon Man.
Okay. And what made you change it?
That was too much like some of the old versions I had, and I didn't want to get caught up in like rewriting an old terrible version. So I just wanted to start new, and really it was a city on the edge, not only on the edge of the sea, but on the edge of destruction, and
Well, yeah.
also, and then, you know, that coupled with the family, you know, being on the edge too.
Well,
you
that
know.
time period for that particular part of the world too. I mean, lots of
Yeah.
things really changed dramatically for many
Yeah.
countries during that, you know,
It's
from
coming
the
back.
70s.
I mean, it's happening again.
Wow.
You know.
And your writing process, do you have like rituals? Do you write every morning? What's your kind of writing process that you go through?
You know, COVID really changed everything for me. I mean, there was a time where it really worked for, not COVID, but pre-COVID, where my process really worked for me because my wife would take our daughter to school. And so I would start writing at like 10, 11 a.m. and I'd pick her up from school, you know, and I'd leave at 2:30. So my writing was always from 10 a.m. till 11:30. But it always, the one common thing then, and that is still now, you know, is that I sit down and I open that laptop and I stare at it. And if something comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I always have that time that I sit down every day and just stare at the laptop and hopefully and pray that something happens. I mean, I know what I'm writing now, and I'm in that process where if I break that, for me, it's like 10, 15,000 words. Once I get past that, you know, it's like starts to write itself, you know, and it's a lot easier. But
So
it's getting to that
do you
point.
plot things out? Do you know where you're going?
Oh, I know where I'm going, but it doesn't often happen that way, you know, because the story takes on a life of its own, you know, and so many writers can, you know, attest to that.
Yep.
But yeah, no, just sitting down and having a routine where you have that time and you just stay there.
Yep.
You know, and, you know, have your notebook handy, you know, take notes, you know, and, you know, because something might happen.
Do you wake up in the middle of the night sometimes with an idea, just like have to just like get it down?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have notebooks everywhere, you know, in the car, in my pocket, everything. Because well, I'm not in my pocket. I mean, I use my notes on my iPhone.
I was going to say, because that, at least you can read what you've written. So I've heard some people write a note down in the middle of the night, like with ink, and they can't figure out what
No. You don't want to turn the light on to wake someone up.
Don't want to turn the light on, can't decipher your handwriting the next day. What did I write?
Yeah. But emailing myself too.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
What about you, Kim? Do you plot stuff out? Do you know where you're going when you write a book?
I would say I lean towards more organic style of writing. I love discovery, but I'm always plotting ahead in my mind, but I don't necessarily do a very detailed outline because I love surprising myself. And then I hope that the reader would be surprised.
Yeah, I was just watching a thing with Don Winslow earlier today because his new book's coming out. His new book's called City on Fire, coming out in September. But he was saying the same thing. He's like, if he's not surprised, if he's not entertained, how does he expect the readers to be surprised? Yeah. And, you know, it's a very, I think, common sort of thing. And I'm dying to know, David, did you ever have the conversation? Because I know I've met Josh a couple of times. We used to do some author dinner, so I love him. Have you ever had the conversation with him about the rejection letter?
Yeah, I actually have, but I can't find the rejection letter. I mean, we're talking, you know, the late 70s. So right. I do keep everything. I mean, I hoard papers, you know, right. So I know I have it and I've got to find it. I swear it was Little Brown.
Yeah.
And it was a female editor.
Wow.
And one day I will find it.
Yep.
And I hope she's still alive. I don't want to get mad. I just want to say it's just timing, and timing is pretty. If I would have been published then, you know, I mean, the book, come on, the book was written by a 17-year-old
kid. Right.
And I'm not a genius writer.
Right. But I mean, I think you're the point though too is that knowing the audience of who you're writing something like that too, I think is important.
Yeah, and timing's important. And for me, timing was years later.
Well, and that's what we tell a lot. I mean, we host a ton of authors, and that's one of the things that every author says to aspiring writers, especially. It's just like, your time will come. eventually, you know, and it's just like, in this business takes a lot of patience, timing, and luck. I mean, there's a lot of things that, and the rejections are brutal. It's a tough one.
And go to Warwick's and buy books because you need to read.
Yep.
Be a better writer. So
true.
read.
And watching these things too, and talking to other authors and finding out what authors do. I think all of that's the process of it.
Yeah, groups have helped me. Yeah.
All right, Kim, tell us, if people want to find out more about you and your books and everything, where should they go to find that out?
Sure. My website's kjhowe.com, and I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as KJ Howe Author. So it's very easy to find, and I would love to hear from you.
Perfect. How about you, David? Do you do any social media or anything?
Oh yeah, you can find me on Facebook, David Swinson, and on Twitter at Case Jackets, CASE Jackets, like, you know, Case Jackets. And I'm on Instagram as David Swinson. And then I have a davidswinson.com as well that
Excellent.
I really don't maintain.
But at least if they go to the .com, they can find your social media handles that way.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's a good thing, because that was one thing when I was putting Twitter out today. I was like, okay, who, David? Who are you? Case Jacket.
Yeah, Case Jackets. Yeah, and I do return emails. So I mean, you can go to my .com and contact me through there. You know,
that's really important too, because I think that people like to reach out and hear from authors, and that's a really great. That's a great thing that you guys do.
Yeah.
Well, this was a great conversation. Thank you both so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we're going to say goodnight to Facebook and YouTube Live, or YouTube if you're watching us. So I'm going to take us off of Facebook now. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.